Let me hand it over to Bulelani, who is speaking to a number of politicians throughout this broadcast.
Thank you so much, Nombu. Of course, last year, this time, there was a lot of tension and uncertainty around whether would the budget be passed. I guess a year down the line, things appear to be different. It seems like the partners in the government of national unity are united around the budget. But to confirm that, I'm joined by Dr. Mark Burke, the DA's finance spokesperson. Dr. Burke, thank you so much for your time. Before we get into the budget, let's talk about the politics around it. I'm sure behind the scenes there's been a lot of negotiations, consultations. Is the GNU united around the passing of this budget this year?
I think broadly speaking, there is an effort now to try and find a way to collaborate within the government. The fact of the matter is I'm not in the cabinet, and even if I was, I wouldn't be able to speak about what happens there. But as a member of the DA, what we are committed to is finding solutions for South Africans, and those solutions include things like not increasing personal income tax, corporate tax, or value-added tax, and in fact, making sure that this time, for the first time in 3 years, we adjust the brackets so that when an average South African gets a slight increase at work, that isn't lost because they move into a higher tax bracket and they just end up paying more tax. So the DA is committed to finding those solutions, and we're hoping we can do this in the first go this year, not the third go.
A lot of emphasis on infrastructure development by the President in his State of the Nation address. How should the finance minister be able to fund this infrastructure development, again looking at the balance of the public spending versus private sector investment?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's almost a bit of a goat's trail across the mountain to try and manage South Africa's financial situation where we have this high debt burden where 22 rand out of every 100 is now going towards servicing our debt, and then we need to incur the spending needed for our police and for our doctors and for our nurses and teachers and so on. And then, as I say, at the same time, as you say, focus on the future by building out infrastructure. So there has been this announcement over the last year that we intend to spend more than R1 trillion over the next 3 years on infrastructure development. And what that allows is it creates the environment for the private sector to try and lift the economy up and get involved in the economy. The state should be focused on creating an environment, not participating actively in the economy. Now, your question around infrastructure specifically also relates to how well government does stuff that it talks about. And I'm really concerned that we keep making these city in the sky announcements and things like sonar, and the implementation is quite frankly that it never ends up happening. So we need to make sure that when we talk about these things, when we allocate funding to them, that the execution follows. And that is a problem in South Africa, and is something that we as the DA, especially the Parliamentary Caucus, will keep the executive accountable on.
Municipalities are struggling, and the infrastructure for water is collapsing. What are some of the short-term interventions that government can make in terms of ensuring that at least at a household level, nobody goes without water for days on end?
Yeah, there's almost a bigger political question there, and that is what can be done at the ballot box to avoid these municipalities collapsing. And the fact of the matter is it is ANC municipalities that are collapsing, but because your question is what can we do now, the fact of the matter is water is a local function. And we need to be investing in the future as opposed to paying out consultant salaries for how to increase tourism in a small town. It's absurd, but that is the way that it's been managed. So your question is also a bit technocratic in that if a municipality receives funding from either electricity or water rates or from the national fiscus, how do you make sure that the funds that come in a certain channel is ring-fenced for the maintenance and development of that channel, such as your piping for water? And we need to start ring-fencing it, and Treasury needs to start being a lot more assertive in making sure that when municipalities receive money from the fiscus, that money is spent on the infrastructure needed, as opposed to these consultant and cadre salaries that serve nobody and end up with people in rural parts of the country suffering the result. And of course now, as we're seeing, that decay has crept into the metros, with Joburg going for a month in some parts without water. It's a local function. We need to change it at the ballot box, and in the meantime, we're hoping Treasury becomes more assertive in making sure that these things are ring-fenced and managed properly.
As the DA, do you expect the zero-rated VAT basket to be increased?
That's a great question. I think the difficulty for the fiscus is that if you haven't increased the value-added tax rate, the answer they give us back is that the basket cannot likewise be. So if you're not increasing the tax and they feel desperate for finances, to then also increase the basket and make their answer is that's a bit difficult for them. Our position is that basket should be expanded. We need to make sure that we bring relief to the South Africans that need it the most. I think if in this budget we can avoid tax increases on the whole and get the bracket creep, that's a good start, and we'll still be advocating for an expanded basket of goods as we go forward.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mark Beck. We will reflect on this budget after the budget speech. And of course, he is the DA's finance spokesperson. A lot of talking points around the issue of restraining the issue of the cost of living for ordinary South Africans and poor households.